Have you ever desired to bring a big dream into your life and then before you knew it, it actually came earlier than expected? And maybe this even required a leap of faith on your part. This is exactly what happened to Emily Krause. She shares her story on envisioning becoming a marketing consultant as a part of her retirement plan. But then things go differently in her career, and she finds it happening sooner than she expected. Be sure to listen to Emily Krause here in my interview with her to empower creatives to live their dreams. Emily, you had mentioned that you always knew consulting was your end game. So, what inspired that vision, and how did you prepare to make the transition from a corporate marketing role to starting your own consulting business?
I think I always knew it was my end game because it seemed like ultimately my retirement plan. I know that I will always continue to work in some capacity. And so the vision I always had was once I retired from the chief marketing officer role, that consulting would kind of be that next step for me and give me flexibility, give me choices in the type of work that I was engaged with, the type of clients that I was engaged with. And the universe just fast forwarded that timeline for me. I'm a kind of a smart goal nerd and in business, but also personally. And so in 2023, when I was looking at probably having 5 to 7 more years in-house, I decided to start looking at what a consulting practice ultimately would look like for me. And so my goal in 2023 for myself, like in professional development, was to explore consulting and understand what that practice might look like. And so I committed to 5 hours a month to just explore what a consulting practice would look like for me. So I reached out to people that had consulting practices that I admired. I asked friends to make connections for me. I did a lot of online research and reading about setting up a consulting practice, setting up a business, all of those kind of things. And just over that year, spent time just really being intentional about what my future would look like. And then things changed with my job. The managing partners of the organization changed. Our alignment on kind of marketing strategy shifted, and it seemed like it was time for me to walk away and look for my next step or my next role. When I made that decision, I didn't necessarily know what was next. I kind of thought I would end up back in house somewhere. And so when I parted ways with my former employer, really was taking a little bit of time to just kind of settle. And I have an 11-year-old daughter, needed, time to like refocus on family, to decide what I wanted the next step in my career to look like. And fortunately, sometimes the universe just brings things to you. I started my career in nonprofits. I've always kept my hand in nonprofit work through pro bono work. And a nonprofit I was doing some pro bono work for reached out and said, "Hey, you've been doing some unpaid work for us. We heard you're like not employed right now. Would you have any interest in doing some paid work for us?" And so Amped Up Marketing was kind of born overnight. I was super fortunate in the timing that I had spent this previous year preparing, and I feel like sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and jump without a net. And so I decided to do it. I was in the fortunate position that my spouse is super supportive of my dreams and my goals. And so he was on board. And maybe for the first time in my life and my career, where I tend to be very type A, I got really comfortable with being uncomfortable. I got really comfortable with not necessarily knowing what was next or having everything 100% mapped out and just trying something new. Um, with the caveat that I could always go back to in-house work if I chose to. And so I think for the first time in my professional career, I am comfortable with a little bit of uncertainty that this might not be forever, or maybe it is. But I'm just kind of going where I'm kind of just following the journey and going where it takes me.
So you said that a year before you left to start your consulting business, you decided to commit 5 hours a month to looking into consulting. Did you have the plan that you would look into it for a year?
I did. That was my
Okay.
2023 goal. I'm 5 hours a
Okay.
month exploring this. I really at that time thought it was still 5 or 7 years away. I just wanted,
Okay, so you did think it was 5 or 7 years away, but it just
it
happened
just
that
happened.
a year into it, the opportunity presented itself and you were prepared and you took that leap of
Correct.
faith.
I think it always
Okay,
felt
fantastic.
intimidating running my own business. It always felt super
Hmm.
overwhelming because there were so many unknowns to me. And like one of those unknowns was getting your business license, which ended up being the most easy part of the whole process. I mean, to get your LLC is a super easy step. You fill out some paperwork and file it. It's not super challenging or difficult, but I didn't know that. And so all of the unknowns surrounding starting my own business felt really intimidating and scary.
Hmm.
And so that year of research kind of took a lot of those unknowns away. And having some planning took a lot of the fear of it away. And so when I decided to make the leap, I was able to do it with a lot more confidence because I had information.
Hmm. And some people say that fear is false evidence appearing real. And so I love that you cut through that false evidence and you've got information, and that helped to calm a lot of your fears. So I hear that you took the leap. You are comfortable, feeling uncomfortable with the uncertainty, but you also have gained flexibility and freedom to be more available for your 11-year-old daughter. So, how does that look now compared to when you were working in the corporate world?
Um, my entire career, I have worked 45 to 60 hours a week. Um, and as a marketing leader, depending on the organization, was on call 24/7. I
Hmm.
managed public relations for the organizations I worked for. And so I was kind of that first line of defense when PR needed to step up and get involved. And whether or not I managed it myself or outsourced it, I still was that key liaison for the organization. And so I've come home from vacations before. I have missed events for my daughter, and those were sacrifices that I made for my career. And the amazing thing about working for myself is I have permission to prioritize the things that are most important to me, including my business. But I have the
Hmm.
flexibility to work when it works around my schedule. That does not mean I am not prioritizing my clients in any way. I believe in full transparency. That's a core value of mine. I believe in honesty and communication. That's a core value of mine. And so with my clients, I feel working for myself, I have permission and my clients have the confidence and faith in me that I'm going to get the job done. Where when I was in house, um, the you're working from home. Are you really working? Or we can't see you in the office, so we're not sure you're being productive. And after working for 25 years, and feeling like I'd proved myself, having corporate leadership that didn't have that same faith and trust and me never felt good, or for my team.
Mm.
It never felt good, and so now I wouldn't say I work any less necessarily. I just work differently. Um,
Hmm.
I can work first thing in the morning when I'm up after my daughter gets on the school bus. And I can take a pause at 3 p.m. when she gets home from school and spend time with her and help her with her homework and be physically present. I don't miss her functions, or I can take her to her practices now because I have the flexibility to work anywhere. And I negotiate all of that with my clients with transparency. Um, but I also find that they're supportive and
Hmm.
they have want work life balance for themselves too. And as long as I meet my obligations and I always deliver on time, there's never a question about whether or not they're getting 100% from me.
And how has that impacted your peace of mind?
I don't think there's ever been a point in my working career where I have had this low level of stress. And I think I anticipated it being opposite. I anticipated, like, oh, owning my own business and being responsible for my pipeline and being responsible for multiple clients at once. And the buck is 100% stopping with me, although I've always had that mindset as a marketing leader, like the buck stops with me. I'm responsible 100%.
Hmm.
Um, I don't I don't think I've ever had this low level of stress in my career. I don't think I've ever um, been this happy working. Um, and it has had a tremendous positive impact on my family. Um, we are sharing the celebrations and in this together. My daughter got to watch me build a brand. And then she wanted me to build a brand for her mother's helper business, So um, she's gotten to see kind of the fruits of my hard work and labor because she is much more a part of my work experience instead of me walking out the door and coming
Hmm.
home 9 hour, 10 hours later. Um, she gets to hear some of the conversation. She knows my clients, and I think um, while I was super successful in my career, um, her seeing me run amped up marketing, I think
Hmm.
she is having a level of exposure to business and work ethic and um, I guess business and work ethic that she never would have seen had this not happened.
So you said that you felt relieved when you resigned from your previous job rather than scared. So what gave you that courage? Was it that year of preparation or was there anything else?
I definitely think it was the year of preparation. I had made the decision I was going to leave the role probably 4 months before it happened. I just didn't expect it to happen the way that it happened. I never
Mhm.
thought I would be somebody that resigned from my job on the spot. Um, but that's how it went down. I was actually in a goal setting meeting with the managing partner, talking about the goals for 2024. And it became really clear to me in that conversation that they wanted to take marketing in a different direction and
Mhm.
potentially didn't see me as part of that journey.
One of the essential elements to creating a life and a career that you love is to move before you feel ready. Emily sets a perfect example for doing this. Many of the times, people wait until all their I's are dots and their T's are crossed, and yet time is passing. Taking a step before we feel ready helps put the momentum in place to create a life that we absolutely love. Let's continue to hear Emily's story.
And so it did take a lot of bravery. Um, in the moment, what I felt was this is my only opportunity to control the situation on my terms. Um, I've always wanted to leave every role with grace. I've never wanted to burn a bridge. I think it's an important business lesson because you never know when people are going to come back in your lives. But additionally, in a town like Richmond, where everybody is 2 degrees of separation away, I think it's really important to maintain relationships even when you're separating. And
Mm-hmm.
so I asked for an honest conversation. I said, can we take the gloves off and be really honest with each other? And um, if you want to take marketing in a different direction, you can. And I can go work somewhere else. And that can be okay. And we can make that decision together and it be positive. And so in that moment, I was able to negotiate my separation from the organization. And the scariest part was calling my husband and telling him I'd resigned. um, and what he said to me was, you know what? We're going to be okay. And you're ready for your next chapter. And I think that support allowed me to feel relieved. I think that
Mm-hmm.
support allowed me to not feel so scared. But additionally, you, it was time for me to leave. And the stress that I had in that role, um, just knowing I wasn't going to have that the next day, knowing that I wasn't going to have to lead something that I didn't necessarily believe in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was a sense of relief. When I got home that day, after all the conversations and meetings, I found myself sitting in my living room all by myself. And I didn't have the TV on, I didn't have music on, I didn't have my phone in my hand. I was just sitting in my living room and I just felt at peace. I felt like I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I also felt like it was going to be okay because I had made the right decision for me. I had honored myself and my personal needs as an employee and as a leader. And now the future was ahead of me, whatever it held. And so it's completely opposite of how I thought I would have felt. But it also told me that I had made the right decision 100%. And I just never have looked back. I've just, you know, I think you have to listen to your body. Stress can be really unhealthy. And when you're in a position that is impacting your mental and physical health, sometimes you do have to make hard decisions um, and honor yourself. And thankfully, it has all turned out to be positive.
I love that you listened to yourself and you gave yourself permission to be true to yourself and that brought you
Mm-hmm.
peace.
It was almost, I will tell you that day, when I reflect on that day, it's like an out of body
Mm-hmm.
experience. It's literally like I
Mm-hmm.
was watching myself and the words were coming out of my mouth and I was having this conversation, but I literally almost felt like it was an out of body experience. Like, and I think you have to trust your gut. I think one of the things that is super important to me is honesty and transparency. And
Mm-hmm.
accountability. And when I feel like I'm in a situation where things aren't necessarily transparent or all the cards aren't on the table or um, I can't trust the moment or the conversation, it is the thing that rubs against me the most. And in that moment, I really had to trust that instinct that,
Mm-hmm.
I had to act and I had to protect myself.
Yeah, you were getting a nudge and you listened to it, and you also were true to your core values. Fantastic. So, this isn't the only time you separated ways. So, you recently broke up with a client. So, what lessons from that did you learn? And how do you navigate difficult client relationships as an independent consultant?
Um, I if I take on a client, I genuinely want what's best for their business. And sometimes that might not be me. And I think the biggest lesson I learned is that it has to be a good fit to be successful. In marketing, marketing requires consistency, marketing requires some strategy, marketing requires transparency and flow of information to ensure that the marketing tactics are aligned with the needs of the business. And sometimes what an organization might need is not necessarily the services I can provide them in that moment. And I need to be okay with that. This morning, I had a response to work I was bidding on, and it became evident that the skill set they needed and the deliverables they needed were different from what I could provide. And so with peace of mind today, I was able to recognize that and connect them with another vendor that could better meet their needs instead of feeling like I needed to make it work, instead of feeling like um, I had to hold on to the business and the account. And so I think that that was the biggest lesson I learned as things were changing with that engagement and the scope of work was changing. And I was trying so hard to adapt to it rather than say, hey, this isn't what we originally agreed upon, and I'm not sure if it's going to work. I was trying so hard to make it work, and it wasn't feeling good. It wasn't feeling good for them, and it wasn't feeling good for me. And I think getting comfortable with the fact that all client relationships aren't forever, that it needs to be a good fit to be successful on both ends, um, and that I did, and to not force it. I think those were the lessons I learned. I always want whoever I'm working for to feel like I'm doing the best job I possibly can for them. And so the hard thing was feeling like this isn't working out. Some of that's like ego and pride, but some of it too is just care and concern that I want to do a good job. And so even at this point in my career, I'm still a pleaser at heart. and and so just like giving myself permission to recognize scope change and that it's okay that every engagement doesn't always go to the final mile. Like I had to build some comfort level with that. But it made it much easier today and this morning, bidding on some work. It made it much easier to recognize that, hey, this isn't a good fit. I don't need to try to force this. Let's give somebody else an opportunity.
That's wonderful. That's a very important business skill, especially as an entrepreneur, to have, is to be selective.
And I still have a good relationship. I saw that client last week and still have a good relationship with them. Because the business relationship ends doesn't mean that it has to destroy a personal relationship. I think when you're operating with integrity and transparency, it makes it a lot easier to maintain the relationships.
Emily mentions the importance of her core values, and a dream will never ask you to go against your core values. As a matter of fact, there is a 5-step test to qualify if a dream is worthy of your energy and your time. As a certified coach, I can walk you through this 5-step test. If you're interested in exploring this further, please be sure to check out the information below and click on the link for authera.com. Now let's continue to hear Emily's story. So, as you celebrate your 2-year anniversary, what has been the biggest surprise or unexpected lesson you've learned on your entrepreneurial journey so far?
It's definitely a roller coaster. And there's so many factors that influence that. The beginning of 2025 looks totally different than the beginning of 2026. There was so much uncertainty in the political and economic landscape that it really impacted the businesses I work with, especially in the nonprofit realm. Grants are drying up left and right. I lost one of my anchor clients because I was grant funded. And so I think things can change really quickly. And so having a pipeline all the time, the business development piece of it is super important. But also things can change really quickly in a positive way too. And so I feel like every time I start to question, is this sustainable for my, like, the rest of my career? I'm pleasantly surprised with the business that comes my way. I also think we've talked about relationships some, but I think relationships are so key to a small entrepreneur or small solopreneur. The majority of the business that I get, I would say 90% of it is referrals from people that have either worked with me in the past or are in my business network. And the biggest honor to me ever is that somebody would refer a client to me and that would trust me to say my name out loud and recommend me. And I think because I've worked in this town for 25 years in marketing, because I've worked across so many different industries throughout my career, and because I've always held relationships as a super important piece of my career, I am feeling the fruits of that effort now, and my network showing up for me, my network supporting Amped Up. I will tell you the biggest surprise when I put Amped Up out into the universe and launched this business was how my network showed up for me. People that I had not worked with in 15 years, people that I hadn't spoken to in 8 years, reached out with congratulations, with how can I help, with how can I support you, and in ways I never could have imagined. And it's probably been the most rewarding part of this journey, reconnecting with people that, because life is busy and you're not in the same role anymore, or your paths aren't crossing as much, having the opportunity to reconnect with all of those people that I've built relationships with throughout my career, feeling that love and support from my community, it's been the most amazing part of this journey.
That is rewarding. So you mentioned nonprofit work. You mentioned building a brand. What are some marketing projects that people could come to you for?
The core focus of my practice is strategy. I think that marketing can do so many things for an organization, but without strategy and alignment with the business goals, it can sometimes just become a lot of activity for activity's sake. There are so many, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. You need a website, you need social media, you need to be on these platforms, you have to have a newsletter, you have to have video, you have to do these things, but maybe you don't. And I think what can become super overwhelming, especially for nonprofits and small to mid-sized businesses who might have limited resources, is all of these you should do's. Um, it it is a lot to manage, and it can become super super fragmented and really drain your resources. And so the first place I always start with somebody who reaches out to me is, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What's working? What's not working? And that is the core focus, like, of that initial discovery. And so I help a lot of organizations in the nonprofit space build sustainable marketing programs. So what should your marketing mix look like? How can you reach your core constituents and target market? How do they like to be communicated with? What channels should you be on? What are you doing that you should stop doing because it's draining resources and not delivering results? And so a lot of times it is that here's this strategy that your organization can follow, whether or not I'm supporting the execution. I also do fractional marketing director and CMO work, where I serve as the senior marketing leader for the organization and help manage their team and help drive strategy day to day. Another place that I work a lot with clients in the nonprofit space and in the corporate space is verbal branding. I've had actually 3 clients who came to me because their marketing messaging didn't align with where the business was today. They'd either changed or evolved or added new business lines, and what was out there in the world about them wasn't in alignment with who the organization was and where it was going. And so building that verbal brand and building a content marketing strategy that told their current story and resonated with their target audience of today is another space where I do a lot of work.
Wonderful. And the strategy, that's such a big value. I mean, even as a business owner myself, there's so many marketing options, but not every marketing option is right for me. And so I can see the value of that. And that's wonderful that you can support companies of all sizes in that way.
Yep, I've got some really small clients. I have a dance studio in Huntsville, Alabama. It's my favorite client acquisition story. When I got the website lead from Huntsville, I'm like, who do I know in Huntsville?
Right.
And when I connected with them, he said, well, I watched this small business webinar and they kept saying, amp up your marketing. They actually said it 7 times, to the point where I was like making tick marks on a piece of paper because they kept saying, amp up your marketing. So I just Googled it, and there you were.
Wow, look at that. They were marketing for
Yeah, and
you.
he's great. He's got a small budget, and he's one of my smaller clients, but he has very, very specific quarterly goals. And we get together once a quarter, and he tells me his goal, and I create a strategy or campaign for him. He executes totally on his own. But even with, a small company and a small budget, I'm still able to help support his business.
Beautiful. So, what inspires you and keeps you motivated on the days when the roller coaster of entrepreneurship feels overwhelming? How do you maintain a positive mindset?
I think it's my network. Um, I think another thing that I've learned in this is, like, mentorship and coaching is so important to all of us, even if we do it for other people. Um, I'm a marketer, I'm not a salesperson. Can I do sales? Sure. Do I enjoy it? No. And so, kind of that business development side of my business can sometimes feel uncomfortable for me and a stretch. And so, I have a great friend who started a business development consulting practice, mostly focused in legal marketing and development. But I reach out to her frequently to be a sounding board for me, to give me advice on what she's learned in her entrepreneurial um, journey, to give me some business development coaching and encouragement, to keep me honest about the goals that I set for myself. I said I was a SMART goal nerd, and one of the things I believe in that SMART goal is that accountability piece. And so I like to say them out loud to other people and tell other people so that they can keep me honest. And when I feel like I'm slipping, I reach out to my network and say, hold me accountable, keep me honest about what I said I was going to do. And so I think that having those support systems set up for myself. I have another friend who has, we worked together when he owned his own agency. I used to hire him as a vendor, and we both worked together in-house when I was at another organization. He has so much entrepreneurial experience that I don't have 2 years in. And so when I have questions, when I have concerns on days where I question everything, I'll pick up the phone and call him and ask him if he's got 15 minutes and to ask him a question or just ask for a pep talk.
That's wonderful. A support system is key, and I'm glad that you recognize that and you're leaning on your support system. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
I think a couple things. I've only ever heard one person ever say they don't have imposter syndrome. That they felt like they had 100% confidence in everything that they were doing. And that's amazing for them. But I have found in my career, I've found in mentoring people, that everybody has a little bit of that. And I think positive self-talk, recognizing your skill set and your value that you bring and not letting people steal your mojo is so important, especially in workplace and business. There are toxic work environments. Work depression is a real thing. And it's challenging because it not only plays on your self-worth and your value, but your economic stability. And so I think the biggest thing I encourage other people on their career paths, keep building your network and your relationships, keep pushing professional development wherever you are in your career, and don't let other people steal your mojo and your value.
If you were inspired by Emily's story, be sure to click like and subscribe to my channel. I also invite you to check out Bree's story for further inspiration, because you deserve to live a life and create a career that you absolutely love. You can do it. I believe in you.